S.H.FIGUARTS Dragon Ball GT Son Goku, or Kid Goku, was released on January 26th, Australia Day. Shout out to all my fellow Aussies. Australian. And retails for 5,500 yen, or roughly $40 US at the current currency conversion rate. I picked mine up at a local toy store right here in Japan, but seeing as this is a regular release, GT Goku should be pretty easy to find on all your regular online import retailers like HobbyLink Japan, AMIAMI, and Amazon Japan. I'll have the links in the description. This is the third Dragon Ball GT figure in the Figuarts line, and it looks like Tamashii are doing really well with what they've been putting out so far. Super Saiyan 4 Goku and Vegeta were both bangers, and GT Kid Goku is surprisingly just as good. Yep, size definitely matters, and in this case, the smaller the better. You're not going to hear that a lot. But in this case, I feel like it's one of the few times the Figuarts Dragon Ball line has got the scale with their smaller characters right. Now I understand how difficult it must be to engineer all that articulation to such a tiny package, and it's not just the Dragon Ball line either. Take Kid Naruto for example from the Naruto line, could be a smidge shorter, and I have to admit that we've gotten some great little releases in the past too. The articulated Chaozu is a fantastic example of simple, small, but effective. Dragon Ball Goku either release is a whole lot of fun, albeit being a tad big, and I even like the Namek Saga Gohan. But with those few exceptional exceptions, we also got several shorter guys that don't quite hit the mark for me. Kid Era Gohan was great, giving us two hair options in one, but the torso was just a little bit too long. Pan was on the right track, but her head was just a little bit too big, especially when you paired her up with Papa Gohan. And Saiyan Armor Krillin wasn't bad, but wasn't great either. It had a hard time standing up due to the unreliable ankles and just didn't live up to the perfect Cell Saga Krillin, which in all fairness has pretty big shoes to fill. Needless to say, not the best track record for smaller scale figures. Again, I understand the difficulty in the engineering and try to meet fan expectations, which is why GT Kid Goku gives me hope. Not only are the proportions great, he actually looks like a kid version of his bigger, beefier, pinkier counterpart, but I think they've packed in as much articulation as you can at this scale. Throw in a ton of accessories, including an extra windswept in-action hairpiece, in-action swappable bottom half gi, and a cute little Kamehameha, and you've got yourself a very, very satisfying release. They've even given the pants some shading on the bottom half, albeit that's pretty much it in terms of paint apps, but we do get some clean whites for the belt and some crispy cream donut pinks for the wristbands. Everything else is your usual molded colored plastics, and that's totally fine. Like a good movie, figures don't always need to be complicated, and this works just fine. The two head sculpts we get are a treat. There's enough detail in the strands of hair to give you enough dimension and detail without going overboard. All the face plates work on both head sculpts, and I think they've covered most bases with the expressions. Thank you for throwing in a happy, smiling Goku face in there too, but I would have liked to see a good old Goku smirk as well. Either way, having two hair options gives you even more posing possibilities, which is something I wish was possible with all releases. Going back to simplicity, because Goku doesn't have as many moving parts, everything feels solid. You get a nice sturdy figure that feels very smooth in hand, which makes posing this little guy such a joy. The smaller joints don't feel flimsy either, and all the joints in his arms and legs feel nice and tight. Alright, so let's take a look at chibified Goku's articulation. Starting off with the head, he looks up, but he looks down even better. We get some really great tilt, side to side, and head rotation left and right as well. And you can see kind of here that he does have, you know, quite a bit of space in between his neck and his head cavity, which is great. I'm really glad that they gave him as much articulation in the head and neck as possible, because most of your, I guess, subtle poses, most of your, emotive poses are going to come from the head, which this figure actually, I think, needs, because the body articulation is a little bit limited. So I'm really glad that they gave Goku here as much head articulation as I possibly could without breaking up the sculpt. You know, even when you have Goku standing in a neutral pose like this, you know, having tilting off to the side, the head tilting off to the side like that, it really adds a lot of character. So really happy with the head articulation. Moving on to the shoulders, he has some really good butterfly joints. As you can see, he can cross his arms, which is great for those natural looking Kamehameha poses. Really happy about that. As most of you know, most of you have seen in the early promotional photos, that he doesn't have a bicep cut, which looks good. And I wasn't 100% on board because I thought it would limit the articulation in his arms. But you do get, and I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but you do get some rotation there in the elbow. It's not a lot, but it is enough, you know, to get him in those more dynamic action poses, which helps. It's not the greatest, again, but it does help. So going back to the shoulders, he gets, you know, all the way up because it is just a hinge there at the shoulder. And it is a single joint there for the elbows, but he does get more than 90 degrees, which is great. I like that. Again, no cut there at the bicep, but you do get a swivel there at the elbow, which helps a lot. And of course, you do have, you know, your standard hinge and swivel at the wrist. So on to the ab articulation. It is just a single ball joint going straight up into his torso. So it's pretty non-existent. You do get a bit of range going back, not too much going forward, not too much going side to side, but it is what it is at this size. You know, I wasn't expecting much, you know, in terms of range for his ab articulation, but he does get side to side rotation, which is decent enough. And the bottom of his gi here, it is made out of a rubbery plastic, so it does, you know, give the figure some room to spread his legs, which is pretty good. And not to forget the belt. This is on a swivel here, so you can move it, you know, side to side, whatever you want. The legs do kick forward pretty good, and they don't kick back because we do have a sculpted butt at the back here. The legs are on just a ball joint, and it does have a inner thigh cut, so it does move in and out like that, which is great. Single jointed knee, but it does move a little bit past 90, which is good. And we do have hinges at the feet, so it does move down, moves up quite a bit actually, which I'm quite impressed with. A tiny toe hinge, and we do get some very decent ankle tilt there. So all in all, again, for his size, for this, you know, kind of figure, for this scale, the articulation is actually really good, and you can get Goku in a ton of fun little poses. I'm really happy with how this came out, and I'm, you know, again, really looking forward to seeing what Tamashii can do with, I guess, a body like this, or a body using this kind of engineering. Really looking forward to a Goten and a Kid Trunks as well. So yeah, great stuff all in all. And as just a bit of fun, I have Goku's power pole on Chibified GT Goku here, and it works. If you want Goku with his power pole, which I don't know if he actually uses in GT or not, correct me if I'm wrong, let me know, but yeah, that definitely works. You can have that as a little accessory, just to, you know, mix things up with your display. And I've also popped the head from GT Goku onto Kid Gohan, the Saiyan armor, version, and I think that works pretty well as well. You know, if you wanted a Dragon Ball Super Kid Goku, or I don't know, maybe just, having Kid Goku on some Saiyan armor, that works as well. The head and the peg fit perfectly, so I didn't use any blue tack at all. But if you wanted to know what that looked like, here it is. Smaller figures usually make it up in their lack of size in the accessory department, and Kid GT Goku has quite a few little goodies. Almost too many, if you ask me. Either way, you have a bunch of hand options, faces, hair pieces, and the most adorable little Kamehameha in this release, so let's take a closer look. Goku comes packaged with a pair of punching fists, a set of classic Goku fighting pose hands, another pair of very similar but different martial arts hands, some open palms you can use for some blasting or cartwheel action, and lastly a set of Kamehameha hands with and without the pegs for your teeny tiny Kamehameha effect. And the neat little thing about this effect is that the effect beams are on ball joints, so you can pose them each any way you want. In, out, sideways, at any angle, which again gives you more flexibility in your posing. Like I said at the beginning of the review, I had my doubts about this one. The FIGUARTS Dragon Ball line not having the best track record with smaller scale figures, the lack of any bicep swivel evident in the early promotional photos, but as soon as I took Goku out of the package, all of those fears were laid to rest. This is probably the best example of what the line can do when everything just falls into place. Scale, aesthetics, articulation, and a bunch of great accessories that complement the figure. I think Tamashii nailed it with GT Kid Goku, to my surprise, and I'm really glad they did. I know a lot of GT fans had been waiting in anticipation for this one, along with, I guess, every other GT character, since we only have the 3 so far. But as I digress, this little release gives us hope that we'll be getting even better smaller scale figures in the future. Fan favorites like Kid Trunks and Goten, maybe an updated Kid Goku and Krillin for the Dragon Ball line, some articulated Cell Juniors would be an absolute treat, but as long as Tamashii keep going down this track, I think we'll start getting smaller characters just as good as their larger scale characters too. And that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed the review, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button and leave us a comment. There's still a ton of reviews still to come, probably S.H.FIGUARTS Final Swing Spider-Man, which is a great figure. But until then, have a good one, and as always, yoroshiku.